Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday morning coffee time gathering. I wasn't watching the clock today, so how is everyone? I see. Seems like everybody's not up this morning or has other things to be doing already. But welcome. Been watching the chat, drinking my coffee. I see a few people were able to tune in to Ajahn Suchito's Dhamma talk yesterday. So I had it on my calendar, but my day got reshuffled, and I had to miss it myself so that I could connect with Ajahn Yanako down at Abai just to catch up on how he's doing and how the community's doing down there. Monks are not the most communicative bunch, and I've been making a concerted effort to keep up with my teachers, my monastic friends all over the world, as well as family. And yesterday was a very nice day. I had a call after our mealtime with Ajahn Amro at Amravati. Kind of catch up with him a little bit and see how he's doing and how his community's doing. They have 60 people in their community, including some people that are a little older and have what we're all calling underlying conditions in the time of the coronavirus. So the gates to the monastery are closed, and they have quite an adjusted lifestyle there through this time period. And been trying to get some sort of sense of what our summer and early fall might look like. And we had a long-term plan for a visit from Ajahn Amro, but given the uncertainties that the virus has brought on right now, it doesn't look like he'll be able to come visit us, at least not in person. So, and they've canceled all their events, on-site events, up through the end of October at this point. So that gives us some sort of sense of where they're at as a community. So there was also a Saturday night talk last night from Ajahn Pasano. I saw some questions about Ajahn Suchita's talk there. Maybe somebody can confirm this in the chat there, but I think his talks get posted on the Chithurst website afterwards, but I'm not sure about that. So if somebody wants to check that and share that with people, that would be nice for people that want to follow up on it. At least according to one person here, the talk was amazing. So it'd be nice to catch up on that. I see a question here from June. How are we receiving alms? Well, that's been a complex, evolving story. I think most of the people here know, but some of the information about that is posted on the homepage of our website, which functions as a bit of a news blog for the Hermitage community. And since, like most of the monasteries, everything's been reconfigured, and I think it was late March we stopped walking alms. Didn't make sense given what was going on in the community and the potential for spreading the virus to our friends here in White Salmon, some of whom are in higher risk kind of categories. So we stopped the alms, and then a system was set up so that the people locally who give on a regular basis can uh, collect the food at the Donna coordinator's house, and then the husband of that couple dons masks, gloves, um, a fresh set of overclothes, and there's a very beautiful offering that happens here on site with him. And he's pretty much the only person we're having contact with. There's one other board member that has to come to do a task once a week, but we've narrowed our connection with other people down to that for this time period. So to protect everybody, and we're for people that are interested in participating, and I know many of you are already. If you email the Donna coordinator, they have the full details, and they have their own little email updates that are going out as needed and as the system changes. So, and there's been an amazing outpouring of interest and concern. So they've set a system up to try to help coordinate. That's their role, is to similar to our board, or the role of a lot of the people volunteering in different ways here is to help uh, make it easier for other people to draw near the Sangha and support the Sangha in various ways. And the Dana coordinators, their kind of main task is doing that with everyone who's interested in providing food support and support for tonics, medicines. So they've done a wonderful job, and it's a mix of people from really all over, including people in the Portland area offering meals at local restaurants that are picked up by volunteers and collated. People in Portland cooking meals to be frozen and stored out here and offered. Um, People in the local community are some of our regular almsgivers, um, offering food on either their regular days or altered days so that everyone has a chance to participate. And it's just been amazing. And I was asking Ajahn Amro what they've done there, and they've closed the gates and have a very restrictive system. And he said people have been so generous and concerned that they're actually sending uh, food now off to various distribution centers in some of the local communities there because they're getting too much. So okay, and Carl, also known as Bob Miller, has checked on this for us. So people that are interested in the Ajahn Suchita talks, they are being uploaded to the Chithurst website. So people can find those there. So one of the teachings I referenced about a while ago now, when we were talking about the hindrance of anger and ill will, we spent a bit of time talking about how to change your mind, in particular, the teaching on having a tiered strategy, how to remove unskillful states of mind, and both in general and also pointed people to take a look at this sutta on the removal of distracting thoughts, which I believe is Majjhima Nikaya number 20. Very short, practical sutta for people that are interested in changing their mind and taking control. I should put that in air quotes. Not totally in control of our mind, but engaging sincerely and intentionally with your conscious experience and moreover your emotional experience of life. And something that goes along nicely with that many of you might also be aware of is how to remove how to remove a grudge or resentment. And it's another one of these teachings, I like teachings. One of my favorite collections is the Anguttara Nikaya Book of the Fives, or the Numbered Sayings Book of the Fives. It's easy to remember 5 things. In fact, most people have an aptitude somewhere between 5 and 7 things. If you get over that, it starts to become difficult to, I guess, internalize that in long-term memory. But 5 lists of 5 are good. So I highly recommend spending a little time studying the Numbered Sayings and Book of the Fives. There's a lot of great practical teachings in there. But how to remove resentment? There's 2 suttas that I'm aware of that speak kind of nicely to this, and I thought maybe I might just go over them really quickly. They're quite short this morning, and I didn't have any blazing insights in my morning practice. My mind feels a little bit flat. I'm going to have to do something about that. Maybe a bit of exercise, a bit more meditation today. So let's see if I can fire up my super duper screen sharing ability here. Oh, too big. So this is a translation from my favorite Book of the Fives. This particular translation is done by Bhikkhu Sujato, Getting Rid of Resentment. And 3 of the strategies will be very familiar to people and make a lot of sense. There's one that is so practical and obvious, but some people don't. Somehow they don't feel it's legit, and it's this one right here. You should disregard a person you resent. Pay no attention to them. So whether they're on Twitter or not, whether they hold high office or not, you should disregard a person you resent. Pay no attention to them. If you can, and sometimes we can. So let me just read this, very short. A mendicant should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen towards anyone. What 5? You should develop love for a person you resent. So that's Sujato's translation of metta, goodwill. That's how to get rid of resentment for that person. You should develop compassion for a person you resent. So we have karuna, second of the Brahma Viharas. You should develop equanimity for a person you resent. The 4th of the Brahma Viharas, upekkha. You should disregard a person you represent, paying no attention to them. You should apply the concept that we are the owners of our deeds to that person. This venerable is the owner of their deeds and the heir to their deeds. Deeds are their womb, their relative, and their refuge. They shall be the heir of whatever deeds they do, whether good or bad. That is how to get rid of resentment for that person. A mendicant and somebody sincere about feeling happy and being emotionally mature should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen towards anyone. So, metta, karuna, upekkha, withdrawing attention, not just to the fault, but the person themselves. The Buddha is saying, ignore that person. You don't yet have the capacity to be in relationship or give attention to that person, so ignore them. Hopefully you'll, in time, build the capacity so you don't have to go around just ignoring people. It's not a great lifetime strategy. And then this last one, reflecting on karma, and this one often kind of comes up in support of how to develop equanimity, um, and it aligns nicely with this conversation we had about you don't need to sit in judgment of people. You don't need to bury your head in the sand either, and condone misdeeds or whatnot. But this reflection that people are the uh, owners of their karma, heirs to their karma, related to their karma, abide supported by their karma. Um, Sometimes that reflection is enough to move us, like to resolve this unskillful emotion that's hijacked our mind and is sabotaging our well-being. So, so that is the reflection on karma applied externally to others. So, and in doing so, be sure it's not tainted with ill will. Um, have it, really just be focused on the fact that, whatever uh, unskillfulness that's going on there, it's like, it should move you to loving kindness and compassion and equanimity, that reflection. So train yourself in that. So that's a nice little teaching. 5 things. Whoops, my camera's over here. 5 things. Uh, Metta, karuna, upekkha, disregard, and reflection on how people are the heir of their karma. The worlds we find ourselves in and inhabit are built of the choices we make in thought, in speech, and in action. So let's see. Brandon has a question here. Would there be skillful levels of how to ignore the person? Yeah, any way possible. Sometimes it's not completely possible to ignore a person, so you have to just be very heedful about the kind of contact that you maybe are required. Like, say your boss, coworker, family member, um, roommate, housemate, husband, wife, partner, somebody you're in relationship to. Sometimes you can't completely. So you do need to be clever, discerning, and skillful. Ajahn, could you also say more about applying equanimity? Uh, oops, equanimity in this context and how it differs from the reflection on karma. It's possibly more global, Jeannie. One thing that I find in trying to encourage equanimity is, like, say, a reflection on uh, conditionality. So people they think what they think, they say what they say, they behave as they do, not for undiscernible reasons. There are causes and conditions. And we reflect on this the other day. Like, if you truly understood, what was it, a Wadsworth poem that Mike had shared with us? Uh, if you truly understood all those conditions, uh, you wouldn't resent somebody. You would have these more beautiful, skillful emotions of loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, uh, understanding what it is that's supporting the way they're being, the way they're acting, the way they're saying, how it is they see the world. So, that's one example. Also reflect, something that might drive you to equanimity as well is accepting your own part in this. Um, like, we have these conceptions of what we expect out of the world and what we expect from other people. And part of why we're feeling resentment is they don't they're violating our understanding of who we think they are or who we want them to be. And I would venture to say that there's probably always a bit of tanha in there if you're feeling resentment. It's a good working hypothesis for a contemplative and a practitioner. If there's suffering, if there's unskillfulness, there is avijja. There is tanha sort of operating there. So yeah, that's another way to sort of reflect on it. It's just that's using discernment. Like, why isn't it I can't feel equanimity about this? I feel like it doesn't belong. I feel like it's wrong. I feel like this is not what I want. This is not who I thought they were. Um, so there's these ways you can reflect on dukkha. You can reflect on anicca, dukkha, anatta, all three of them, but like dukkha in particular, to move one back to equanimity. It's like you're feeling resentment because it's unsatisfactory, the way people speak and behave. Again, we have to decouple this kind of misguided investment we have in everything being pleasant and agreeable. So, all right. So there is a second sutta. I believe it follows right on from the first one. And this is a standard feature in the suttas. You have Sutta 1, Sutta 2, there's a little variation. There, Venerable Sariputta addressed the mendicants, reverends, mendicants. Reverend, they replied. Sariputta said this: Reverends, a mendicant, should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen towards anyone. What 5? In the case of a person whose behavior by way of the body is impure, but whose behavior by way of speech is pure, you should get rid of resentment for that kind of person. In the case of a person whose behavior by way of speech is impure, but whose behavior by way of body is pure. In the case of a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is impure, but who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. In the case of a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is impure, and who doesn't get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. In the case of a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is pure, and who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time, you should get rid of resentment for that kind of person. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of body is impure, but whose behavior by way of speech is pure? Suppose a mendicant were wearing rag robes, sees a rag by the side of the road. They hold it down with the left foot, spread it out with the right foot, tear out what was intact, and take it away with them. In the same way, at that time, you should ignore that person's impure behavior by way of body and focus on their pure behavior by way of speech. That is how we get rid of resentment for the person. Mhm. It's a little bit off your screen, isn't it? Let me refocus that. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of speech is impure, but whose behavior by way of body is pure? Suppose there was a lotus pond covered with moss and aquatic plants. Then along comes a person struggling in the oppressive heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. They'd plunge into this lotus pond, sweep apart the moss and aquatic plants, drink from their cupped hands, and be on their way. In the same way, at that time, you should ignore that person's impure behavior by way of speech and focus on their pure behavior by way of body. That's how to get rid of resentment for that person. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is impure, but who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time? Suppose there was a little water in a cow's hoof print. Then along comes a person struggling in the oppressive heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. They might think, this little bit of water is in a cow's hoof print. If I drink it with my cupped hands or a bowl, I'll stir it and disturb it, making it undrinkable. Why don't I get down on all fours and drink it up like a cow, then be on my way? So that's what they do. In the same way, at that time, you should ignore the person's impure behavior by way of speech and body and focus on the fact that they get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. And that's how to get rid of resentment for that person. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is impure and who doesn't get an openness and clarity from time to time? Suppose a person was traveling along a road and they were sick, suffering, gravely ill, and it was a long way to a village, whether ahead or behind, and they didn't have any suitable food or medicine, or a competent carer, or someone to bring them to the neighborhood of the village. Then another person traveling along the road sees them and thinks of them with nothing but compassion, kindness, and sympathy. Oh, may this person get suitable food or medicine, or a competent carer, or someone to bring them to the neighborhood of a village. Why is that? So that they don't come to ruin right here. In the same way, at that time, you should ignore the person's impure behavior by way of speech and body, and the fact that they don't get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time, and think of them with nothing but compassion, kindness, and sympathy. Oh, may this person give up bad conduct by way of body, speech, and mind, and develop good conduct by way of body, speech, and mind. Why is that? So that when their body breaks up after death, they're not reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. That's how to get rid of resentment for that person. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is pure and who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time? Suppose there was a lotus pond with clear, sweet, cool water, clean, with smooth banks, delightful, and shaded by many trees. Then along comes a person struggling in the oppressive heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. They'd plunge into the lotus pond and bathe and drink. And after emerging, they'd sit or lie down right there in the shade of the trees. In the same way, at that time, you should focus on that person's pure behavior by way of body and speech and on the fact that they get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. That's how to get rid of resentment for that person. Relying on a person who is impressive all around, the mind becomes confident. A mendicant, or one sincere on their own well-being, should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen towards anyone. So that one's a little bit longer. Well, it might be tedious for some. I think it's nice to read suttas to each other. You can close your eyes and contemplate them. And there's something imparted, of course, in the reading of it that might be different than you're just scanning it on your own. This is a good one to go back and look at a little more carefully than the first one we looked at. There's these analogies or similes, that we have in the suttas are not haphazard. And of course, as Ajahn Sona pointed out, I think in the retreat, they're wonderful images and stories to help cement this into your memory. Uh, and that is good. I mean, memory is good because it helps us. It helps make this accessible for contemplation. If you're sitting meditating, or you're off on a walk, and all of a sudden your nemesis comes into mind, or some person that you have resentment towards, um, it's good to have tools like this at hand. And in particular, these images are great, and they really underscore some of what's there in the first sutta. Um, it's just the very practical advice. We talked about how attention to the fault um, is the problem, and is the thing that kind of nourishes unwise attention to the fault. That is the nutriment for these afflictive family of states that the second hindrance is pointing to. Uh, and what's the practical advice here? Don't focus on the fault. Like, that simile of like a monk who wears rag robes, which the monks did in the time of the Buddha, and there's still some that do now. He finds this foul, discarded piece of cloth. What does he do? He finds the good bit, tears it off, takes that. So, wise attention to what's right, to what's good, to what's suitable, useful, beneficial. The way perception works is it tends to be reinforcing. So if we are obsessed with, focused on, give unwise attention to the fault, we're setting up our perceptual apparatus or abilities to focus in on that and notice more of that. And so to seek balance, resolution, we got to guard against that. And part of the way is to look at what's right, look at what's good, and almost everybody has some sort of positive attributes that you can reflect on if you find the mind skewing negative and arousing these afflictive states um, of emotion. Just noticing the chat here, it's I think 162, Book of the Fives, the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fives, number 161 and 162. So, and I love the my favorite in here is the this image of drinking from a cow's hoof print. So think of how foul and how small the water would be in a cow's hoof print. And you couldn't even drink it with your cupped hands or a bowl. You have to get down on all fours and drink it up like a cow. Uh, that's the effort. That's the length that one needs to go to, that one should go to sort of resolve resentment, anger, and ill will, and to move the mind to skillfulness. Now, I don't think you'll forget that, at least not for today or a little while or something. Just run that simulation in your mind. You get down on, remember, you're struggling in the oppressive heat. You're weary, you're thirsty and parched. You get down on all fours. I mean, this is like some survival scene in one of these movies we've seen, right? I think I've seen something like that in a movie or two. And again, like it's just brilliant. Uh, bring that to mind when you think that you can't forgive somebody, or you shouldn't, or they don't deserve your love, or they don't deserve your compassion. uh, pull that one out. Uh, so, and I don't know if the Buddhists, I haven't really reflected on this, but sometimes these things are not haphazard in their structuring. So another point of contemplation for this would be to kind of look at this and just see it. Is there any logic to this being a tiered strategy? I'm not so sure because that it ends with this last one here where you have somebody who's just they're skillful. They're skillful and their speech is pure, their action is pure. Plus, they have an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. So it's like somebody who has very skillful mind states that they've cultivated. And notice what's going on there. Like we've talked about ignoring people and withdrawing attention. Notice what's going on there. Suppose like for that person, all the conditions are beautiful, right? It's like a beautiful lotus pond. The water is clear, sweet, cool, clean. It has smooth banks, delightful shaded trees. So for that one, you focus on everything that's right in that person. You don't tear them down. You don't diminish them in any way. And what happens after you bathe and drink? You plunge into that water. You bathe, you drink, and then you emerge and you go on your merry way. No, you sit or lie down right there in the shade of the trees. So, and there may be a little of the Buddha's encouragement to draw near. We are social creatures. We need not just Kalyanamita mentors, but we need wise association. So make an effort to associate and linger with the wise. So, all right. Well, for those of you, this is a pretty famous and popular sutta, but there must be at least one person in here who hasn't come across this before. So kind of raise that for your attention and contemplation today. And it'd be wonderful to spend a little time taking these things to heart and contemplate it. Like you pick it up, look at it, turn it around, look, listen, go beyond the mere gist of it and simplicity of it, and see what it is that you can learn to apply to your endeavor to practice the path. So I'll leave that for your reflection today. Sorry for those who have to get on to other things. We're a little over time, but I think it was well worth it. So, all right, be well, friends, and have a wonderful Sunday. And if that's what day it is, wherever you are, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.